Today is the 28th of April, 2019. I think there's time today to do two short suttas from volume 47. The first sutta is 47.12. That is on page 114. Is that correct? Phasuvihara Sutta. The discourse on dwelling at ease. This is from Anguttara A5.105. The theme is harmony in the Sangha. So the theme summarizes the title, Phasuvihara. Phasu means comfort, ease. Basically, it means like harmony, living happily together, fellowship, and so on. Vihara is a broad sense here. Physically, it means a place of residence. In fact, the verb viharati means to reside in a certain place. So, literally, in the physical sense, vihara is a residence of a monk. Originally, it just refers to a leaf hut, for example. Usually, it's something constructed. Okay? Then, later on, this vihara became bigger and bigger as the donors, the lay people, contributed to the construction. Now, viharas are very comfortable homes. They are actual houses where lay people live. So that kind of residence, especially in the urban areas, usually called vihara. Many decades ago, when we had this lay community, the Brahmacharys, we also had a vihara. It's called a Dhammansara Buddhist vihara. So somebody loaned us the house, and we used that as a kind of a residence, a teaching place. The reason those days why we use that kind of vihara is basically independence, freedom, because it's very tricky, very difficult to live in a shared place in a temple. You have to be very careful what you say, what you teach. All the time you'll be watched. So you got to toe the official line of the temple. And then again, the temple may have their own activities which will disrupt your own activities. So you won't be able to work independently. So it's always good to have your own place, even if you're working as a lay person. The next problem, of course, is the cost of having a place like that. So we were fortunate, this very kind lady loaned us the house. And then later we got our own for a while. So that was the kind of beginning of a lay Buddhist movement in Malaysia and Singapore. And nowadays, of course, we still have lots of lay Buddhist workers teaching the Dharma. So basically, we can say that the Sutta tradition is very much a lay tradition in global Buddhism today. Unlike the monastics who are more prone to rituals for various reasons, the lay people, the serious lay practitioners, they want to know the original teachings, where do their practice come from. For example, if you want to learn breath meditation, which sutta do you read? We talk about Satipatthana, where does it come from, right? So you have suttas behind all these teachings, not just one, but many suttas. And then we talk about jhanas, there are also many teachings on jhanas. So anyone who says the Buddha did not teach jhana, obviously they did not read the suttas, for example. So the suttas are the final authority in in early Buddhism. I mean, if you don't have the suttas, you don't have Buddhism, basically. I mean, it's like you remove all the sacred texts of all the religions, they fall apart. You don't have, any kind of teaching anymore. Except in the case of Buddhism, we are so teacher-based that we forget. In fact, after many generations, we forget actually we have our own suttas. And to compound that problem, we have scholars who actually tell us that the kind of Buddhism we practice today didn't exist until the colonial days. I cannot accept this thesis that what we practice did not exist before the colonial days. That it is the colonial scholars who invented the kind of Buddhism we're practicing, reading the suttas, saying that the Buddha existed as a historical figure, things like that. I mean, even before the colonial periods, you have this Tipitaka in Sri Lanka, in Myanmar, in Thailand. The monks know all these suttas very well. Of course, the lay people do not know it so well. But today, because of the rise in education, global communication, internet especially, and very much better ways of publishing, printing books, book media, learning media, we are able to access the Tripitaka more easily. And because of that, you begin to see this resurgence of Buddhism where people want to know the original, inverted commas, original teachings. When we talk about the original teachings of the Buddha, what are we talking about? In terms of literary evidence, of course, it is the suttas. And secondly, it is the suttas are there to guide our practice. All right? So that's the first thing. Now, this is a kind of quid pro quo thing, back and forth. Huh? You study the suttas so that you know what meditation is about. And then you study meditation, then you understand better what the suttas are really talking about, right? So in other words, it's like you go to this museum and you see all these exhibits very nicely labeled. You say, well, okay, this came in what year, and this one is what object, and so on. So very nice. No, but that's all they are to us, because we do not know how to connect them, their significance. Then you read all these historical journals and books and scripture texts, and you listen to all these experts talking. Then you begin to see, wow, it's not just any object anymore. It has a big story behind it, and then this object is connected with that object, and they form this amazing complex of stories. So then you begin to see, oh, this is where I came from. So you're not just mushroom. I mean, even a mushroom also, you have all these conditions there, see? So you begin to see yourself in context. And this context is very vital in helping us in our practice, because the suttas record, it's not just stories, not just myths. All these stories and myths help us to understand the Buddha's experience of awakening. The suttas are vital because it's a diary of the Buddha's awakening. It is precious and valuable because it tells us how the mind, the human mind, liberated itself. What could be more precious than that? So it is told in a variegated, very interesting ways. So you can choose what kind of text you like to read, and then you go from there, right? And now you have all these suttas with modern commentaries. It's very much easy to understand. Then, how do you benefit? What do you benefit from all this? You feel peaceful. You feel good. You say, oh, I know this thing. I'm very happy with this thing. You don't have to, say, oh, no, I have wrong views about this. Even if you do have wrong views, you can change them. You grow, basically, You understand the nature of views. You say, oh, these views are provisional, so I use them right now. I understand that that's the way I can see things, okay? It's just like you're not an art connoisseur. You like art, but you can recognize, okay, this is Mona Lisa, this is the Birth of Venus, this is another painting by Botticelli, and so on. But then later, as you study art history, you begin to see the connections and the story behind it. Same thing with music. You like music, you just listen to the music. But if you know music history, you begin to feel much more than just music. You begin to understand that this person, could be Chopin or Beethoven or Bach or someone, he wrote this piece under what circumstances? For whom did he write? How did he come to write these things? So you begin to see all this as living experiences of past masters. So if you can see that way, you begin to understand you're talking about this, when you're talking about the suttas, you're talking about the living experiences of the Buddha, and that becomes even more precious. Talking about freeing the mind. Okay, so on a simple level, when you live by the suttas, you have this experience of Phasuvihara. Okay, so this short sutta A5.105 is just about that. How the monks, the good monks in the Buddha's time, live happily together, and not just that, it is an example for us to follow also. So let's look at the translation on page 122, Phasuvihara Sutta, 121. The old book is 121, the new book is 122. Phasuvihara Sutta. The discourse on dwelling at ease. Now notice here, ease here doesn't mean luxury. It means no stress, you're at peace with yourself, you can practice. Okay? In Thai, this word has become sabai. Sabai. Now, sabai comes from a different word in Pali. It comes from sapaya, I think. It means you have all the supports, okay, if I'm not wrong, okay. So, anyway, the sense of sabai, living at ease, has developed in Thailand, is connected with another important Thai word called Mai Pen Rai. Mai Pen Rai. Mai Pen Rai means it doesn't matter, okay. It doesn't matter. In other words, don't worry too much, don't think too much. Okay, so these are very Buddhist attitudes. Basically, it means live in the present moment. Okay, so in that sense, they're very forgiving, but of course, we don't say they're very forgetful. Okay, but the idea is to live at ease, so that we can grow as Buddhists, we can practice the precepts well, we can train our minds well, and we attain certain levels of peace leading us to the path. A5.105. Bhikshus, there are these 5 ways of dwelling at ease. What are the 5? Here, bhikshus, ever present in a monk is loving kindness through deliberate deeds of the body towards his fellow brahmacharis. Brahmacharis are the other monks who are celibate, okay? Both openly and secretly, privately, both openly and privately. Okay, you notice in this line 1, 2, 3, they repeat, the only word that changes is the key word, the source of the action, body, speech, and mind, okay? Now let us look at number 1, make sure we understand that, then we read the rest of the numbered sections. Okay, ever present in a monk, that means you must practice this regularly. Now, monk here refers to anyone who's listening to the Buddha's teaching. That's one meaning. Unless the Buddha is talking about Vinaya, the Buddha very clearly addressing the monk's rules. Okay, but even then, it's good to know, because the monk's rules are there because there are lay people. All right. Then another meaning of monk are the meditators. When you meditate, you close your eyes and you put your palms together, and then you feel peaceful. You have reached what is called a state of monkness, bhikkhu bhava. Okay. Another way of putting it, you are practicing renunciation, right? So remember those days I used to say, if someone asks you, can you tell me what is Buddhism in one word? I would advise the word is joy. The purpose of being a Buddhist is to be happy through loving kindness, if you like. Then, in terms of practice, it will be to practice loving kindness. Right? You close your eyes, you practice loving kindness, you watch your breath, okay, joy arises, okay. So, in terms of practice, then the word will be renunciation. Renunciation. So the feeling is joy, the practice renunciation. Now renunciation has a big meaning. Okay, the most palpable, the most obvious meaning is, of course, leaving home, becoming a monk, becoming a nun, becoming an anagarika, even someone who is, we call this person a kind of acolyte. In other words, he's going to be a monk in due course. So renunciation has different levels, right? So on the more personal level, basically learning to let go. For example, if we are having a good job or we have a lot of things, we share our wealth. This idea of sharing wealth is very important in Indian Buddhism. But when capitalism came, then you have this problem of selfishness. If you don't work, I won't give you anything. Only when you work, I give you something. So we have this kind of mindset now. And that causes a lot of problems. One of the problems causes, of course, is stress. Because we have to work hard, otherwise we don't deserve, we won't get food, shelter, clothing, and medicine. But the Buddhist way is, if you are wealthy, you have good karma, so you share your good karma with others so that people around you are happy and you have this beautiful environment, ambience of good karma wherever you go. So wealth has a purpose, to create good karma and create this deva-like, heaven-like environment wherever you go. So in that sense, if you are rich, you're also living like a deva, okay? Provided you follow the rules of morality, moral virtue, and so on. Okay? Then, in other words, you are learning to let go a little bit of something extra which you don't really need. Okay? On a higher level, you have to let go of negative emotions, which is more difficult. You have to let go of greed, hate, delusion. Right? I mean, if you go into Facebook, you find people have a lot of ideas, and the Facebook thrives because they struck a gold mine here, they struck this human emotion of wanting to express themselves. You can express all your greed, hate, and delusion through Facebook, and many people often do. So everybody thinks that they are right. They write something, they say, you're wrong, I'm right. So if you're a Buddhist, you will say, I'm only having a view, I'm only sitting a view. Of course, I could be wrong. Maybe I'm wrong, but then again, I'm partly right. Then people are not likely to knock you down. So in other words, you're more open. You don't claim things in a unilateral and absolute ways. So teaching Dharma, learning Dharma is very difficult on a Facebook. But if you can create an environment with rules, with precepts, then even Facebook and social media can be very helpful in communicating the Dharma. Can you imagine you have this device, you have this means of speaking, communicating to people worldwide, Right? So now, of course, I'm using only the internet. I've not used any voice or video because that will take a bit more time. Maybe in due course I may do that if I get the right people to help me. So now I'm only we have a resource place, where you store all the suttas, they're available, the Dhammaphara website. So the internet, Facebook, they are very variable, very accessible, very effective means of transmitting the Dhamma. Right? Okay, so that is, we are commenting on the word monk, by the way. I'm following the commentarial style. If I had one word, I'd be talking a lot of things, right? So it comes from this one word, monk. Then loving kindness. So the Buddha said, you want to live happily together, you have to practice loving kindness, metta. Okay. Now notice this loving kindness is not a common word. In fact, it's quite a young word considering English word. It's not commonly used. It is combination of both love and kindness. The Pali word is metta, and it is sometimes explained as unconditional love, unconditional acceptance of others. And this has to be explained. Unconditional acceptance means I accept you just as you are, right? Whether I know you or not, okay? Whether you need it or not. In other words, you're a normal person without much serious problems. So that is called loving kindness. In other words, if you're angry, I accept you. I say, may you be well and happy. If you're happy, I also say the same thing. You like me, I say the same thing. You don't like me, I say the same thing. Right? So I accept you just as you are. Now the moral question arises. Can I show you loving kindness if you're a robber or a killer or someone who breaks the precepts? The answer is yes, I still have to show you loving kindness because that's what you are. In an important way, when someone breaks a precept or someone does something morally wrong, it's not exactly their fault. Because in Buddhism, we don't really talk about fault in that sense, that the person is to be blamed. Rather, we talk about the action is wrong. We don't say the person is wrong, we say the action is wrong. Okay? So in that sense, we don't have to forgive the person, but we forgive the action, so to speak. But the action can only be forgiven when the victim is healed and the person who is hurting or causing the problem has understood the gravity of his action, right? So only then this person can renounce, can let go of the negative state. So then when you say you show loving kindness to this kind of person, then it works. Because you are telling this person, I know you did something wrong, you're not very happy, that's why you did this terrible thing. If you're really happy and you understand what is good, what is bad, you wouldn't do this, right? So that's how loving kindness works. So loving kindness is not license. Loving kindness someone cannot come to you and say, I've done something terrible, you're a Buddhist, right? You've got to accept me as I am. Well, it's not exactly like that. It'll be a state of chaos, a state of what's called anomy. In other words, anyone can do whatever they like. It's not like that. You accept this person as a start, so that this person can heal and change himself to be better. So this is what loving kindness does. Because if you don't accept the person, it's difficult for this person to change, right? So that's loving kindness, right? So imagine you're living in a community as monks and nuns, as lay people, lay practitioners. You need loving kindness through bodily action, through your bodily action. In other words, don't kill, don't steal, don't commit sexual misconduct. And other positive bodily action like practicing of charity, of giving, right? So this is a loving kindness through bodily action. Then the next one, number 2, ever present in a monk or in us is loving kindness through deliberate deeds of speech towards his fellow brahmacharis, both openly and privately. Okay, so next practice is the way we talk. We talk right speech, loving speech, speech of loving kindness. Yeah. So this again is not always easy because sometimes a person does something very wrong. We got to, stress the situation. The Buddha's language is often full of loving kindness. But there are occasions when the monk, especially a monk, has wrong views which he refuses to give up. Then the Buddha will address the monk as he is. The Buddha will call the monk Mogha Purisa. If you're called a Mogha Purisa, you can say sort of that's the end of the world for you, so to speak. Mogha means empty, Purisa means person, right? So Mogha Purisa means at the moment everything is lost for you. You better start all over again. So empty person, hollow person, right? So, and normally this person is really very stubborn, refuses to change, to give up his wrong view and so on. So the Buddha can be quite stern when the situation deems it, right? So he's not a kind of wishy-washy person, right? He can be very serious as a teacher without hate, okay? So here it is through speech. Now then look at the next phrase, towards his fellow brahmacharis. Now the Buddha didn't say fellow monks or fellow nuns. The word here is brahmachari. Now you got dhammachari and you got brahmachari, so they use interchangeably. Dhammachari is dhammafarer, one who practices the dhamma. It's a broader term, so it can refer to both monastics and lay people, right? But brahmachari is a special term. It is used in the sense of celibacy. Brahma, this high god of the first jhana. In fact, those gods which are living in the jhana worlds, they are called Brahmas. Brahma as an adjective means perfect, but in terms of word usage, they refer to the gods of the dhyanic heavens, where they are in deep joyful meditation. Whereas the gods in the sense world still enjoying themselves, the very more refined pleasures that the humans enjoy, they are simply called devas. Okay, so in other words, these Brahmas, they are very mental beings. They do not need physical joy. They don't have a body in the first place to enjoy the kind of joy that we enjoy. It's like, let's say, you need some tools to work with, all right? Whenever you work, you need some tools. But you have this person who is so good, he doesn't need any of those external tools. He can use his own hands and make those things, like art, for example. I had a teacher who doesn't use any brush. He uses his finger to paint, so it's called finger painting, something like that. It's not a very good example, but the idea is humans have a body, 5 senses, and we depend on the 5 senses, and our joy also are dependent on the 5 senses. Whatever good thing we enjoy are always based on the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body. All right. Whereas the devas of the Brahmas do not have this body. They don't enjoy this kind of body-based pleasure. What's wrong with body-based pleasure, you might say? Number one, they're difficult to attain. The body gets tired. Number two, the pleasure not permanent. After you enjoy, it's gone, and then you want it again. You think of that particular kind of pleasure, you want to try to get it again, but you find that you can't. You cannot repeat that kind of joy. So it's impermanent, right? Whereas when it comes to deep meditation, you find this jhana joy, for example, very peaceful. And it's something you don't forget because you feel so good and peaceful about this thing, about this joy. So here, brahmacharis refer to celibate people who train themselves to rise above the limitation of the body so that they can attain jhanas, right? So this is the higher meaning. We call them celibate practitioners. Now you can be celibate whether as a monk or as a layman, whether as a monastic or as a layperson. Why? The purpose of being a celibate is not that sex is evil. This is the last thing we should think about, okay? Because sex is not regarded as good or evil. It's just a function of humanity, okay? We give up sensuality of the body so that we can focus our mind to attain this higher level of jhana, where we are free from the body. And we attain this high level, jhana is so peaceful, it helps you to attain non-returning and arahathood faster, right? So being a monk, this is what you're supposed to do. So the word brahmachari is used in that context, okay? Referring to other monks and nuns. So monks and nuns, in other words, by rule, are not meant to have any kind of sexual relationship. They are supposed to avoid all kinds of sensual relationship, in other words, okay? Sexual, parasexual, and sexual related kind of behavior. They're supposed to give it up. That is why the Buddha is very strict about even monks and nuns hugging others. Okay? This is one of the big problems, a cultural problem that's going on now. Okay? In Asia, of course, we are very used to this social distance. Right? And it is because of this you find the monks and nuns can live more happily than in the West. You have this famous nun in Thailand who, had to give up her family. She herself said that someone asked her, what is the most difficult thing you faced when you became a nun? She says, the most difficult thing for me is, for my children rather, is that my eldest son feels very sad that she cannot hug me. The Thais are very loving people. So the son felt a sense of something missing. But those are the rules. Okay? Then in the West, you find this hugging is such an important thing, very natural thing. I have so many international students, some of them are exchange students, they come to the universities and they attend the Buddhist classes and they're very happy to be Buddhist. And then they're going to go home. Then they come and see me, they say, thank you for your teachings, I want to hug you, may I hug you? So I'm a layman, I say, okay, no problem, And even Asians, even our close friends, we hug each other, and this is an appreciation of the other person's being. Right? In other words, you've got nothing to hide. However, when it comes to monastics, it's a bit problematic. The Sinhalese monk in America, for example, they're facing these big problems. So they try to solve this by saying, there will come a time when monks have to feel that it's okay to hug women. And this was spoken like about a decade ago, I think, by one monk, Sinhalese monk. And recently, you have a photograph of this smiling monk hugging a woman. Free hugs, she had all the cards of free hugs. And that caused a lot of controversy, lots of retaliation. People are not very happy with that. I think the most wonderful thing is someone wrote a beautiful response to this misdemeanor, if you like. This lady, local Buddhist, she says, I knew someone, this person is a celibate lay practitioner, very famous teacher, he's been teaching, he's going around teaching people, and he decided to be celibate. So, and he has a wife, and he's very happy living that life, being celibate. Then one day, after some time, he counseled this woman, and this woman is very happy, so happy that this woman hugged him. The sad thing is that he allowed it, see, because but after that, he gave up his monastic, his celibacy rule, and he married this woman. And later, when someone asked him, "What happened? Why did you give up your celibacy rule?" His answer is very significant. He said, "It was a good feeling." It was a good feeling. And what this story writer writes is very significant. She says, there you are, it seems to be good and innocent, but when someone says a good feeling, you break your rules. And that's the end of your keeping of the rules. Of course, in the case of this lay person, it's no big deal, you might say. See? But in the case of the monk, if the monk says, it's a good feeling, and he gives up his being a monk, it's being defeated already, right? So, in other words, the Buddha was trying to say, it's better to prevent this kind of risk than to court it, in other words, right? So that's why the rules are very strict, that the monks must keep social distance from the women and from each other, by the way. It's not like monks and monks are okay too. Gay relationships also are not allowed amongst the monks. So, whereas loving kindness is different, because you have this wonderful joy inside you. It's the joy wanting to give, radiating, rather than taking in. So it's different. You're happy to see people just as they are. Like you see, as you travel, you see children playing, you're very happy. You don't want to go there and then hug them or take them home. You don't have to. Just say, may you be well and happy. You see animals playing, you say, oh, wonderful, you're very happy. You don't go to the crocodile and say how happy you are. It'll be the last wish you make, you know. Or you see flowers, you say, oh, look at the flowers, they're so beautiful, and you feel happy. You look at them as they are. You don't have to pluck them, take them home. That's loving kindness. So that's the meaning here, okay? Loving kindness shown to co-celibates, right? And then both openly, in other words, when you meet people, and privately. How do you openly show loving kindness? All right, here the eyes are very important, okay? In the suttas, it is said the monks look at each other in the eyes. Okay, you notice if someone doesn't want to look at you in the eye or shifty-eyed, as we say, then if you study psychology, you'll say, oh dear, this person has something to hide, right? So the suttas say these monks and nuns, of course, included, they look at each other in the eyes and they mix like milk and honey. Milk and water. Okay, so this is showing your loving kindness openly, with a gentle smile. In fact, you don't have to make an effort to smile. You have loving kindness. There is that radiance in your face, and people can feel they can be near you. They in fact like to be near you. Animals especially can sense it. They'll come to you. Okay, so that is showing loving kindness openly. Privately, when you are meditating, when they're not around, wherever they are, you say, may they be well and happy. And then you talk kindly of them. All right? So that is true speech. And number 3, ever present in the monk is loving kindness through deliberate deeds of mind towards his fellow brahmacharis, both openly and privately. So this is, you think of this person in happy terms. Sometimes I write very strong feedback on the wrong practices of the monk. But one thing I can tell you, I don't hate them. It is with a sense of desperation, sadness, we say some of those things. But we want these monks to practice the Vinaya. We want them to learn the Dharma. We want them to be examples to others, right? So this loving kindness to the mind is very important, and of course to the mind will definitely, most of it will include cultivation of loving kindness, in other words. Okay, so there you are. These are the first 3 parts, showing of loving kindness through action of body, through speech, through mind. Number 4, he dwells openly or privately in a holy life that is accomplished in moral virtue. All right. Now here I've translated as a holy life. Here, holy life, that means either you become a monk, a nun, or as a lay person, you observe the precepts, including the precept of celibacy. Okay. That is accomplished in moral virtue, right? So if you say you're practicing Buddha Dharma, you must have moral virtue, right? You cannot take a Zen-like stance and say, oh, you know, all these rules are made in India, they're out of date now, we are in Japan, we're in Singapore. No, it's not like that, okay? That is maybe modernism, but it's not Buddha Dharma, right? So we have to be very careful, especially when it is spoken by a professor, by a famous teacher, even by a famous priest, right? Remember the Untitled Sutta? The Buddha says even famous teachers can have wrong views, right? So if you don't study the suttas, you start thinking your personal ideas come first, right or wrong, okay? So moral virtue is very important because moral virtue trains our body and speech. If our body and speech are not ready and calm, we will not be able to cultivate our mind. So calmness of body and speech, the basis for calmness of the mind. That's the meaning here. No? And you notice that this is what is put in the sutta language. In other words, after moral virtue, you see definition or explanation. Virtues that are dear to the noble ones, to the arahats. Unbroken, untorn. Okay, unbroken, untorn is a pair of metaphors of the cloth. Okay, cloth. The cloth is unbroken, untorn. Like a very beautiful piece of cloth. Unmixed, spotless. Okay, these two are metaphors of a beautiful cow. The cow color is pure white, okay, or pure brown, tawny, if you like, and spotless, without spots. So those are supposed to be beautiful looking cows or cattle. Liberating, notice, so you're practicing the precepts to feel liberated, mentally liberated. If you have not broken any precept, you feel kind of happy, relaxed. Praised by the wise, untarnished, giving rise to samadhi. Okay, this last one is very important. Giving rise to in other words, it helps you in your meditation. Now, a lot of people who are unable to meditate, perhaps it is very likely something is wrong with the precept somewhere. So they've got to examine their habitual life, if you like. Are they constantly quarreling with someone? Are they constantly killing? For example, if you enjoy hunting, killing for sports, wow, it's going to be very hard to meditate, you know. So you got to make sure you keep the precepts well, right? In fact, this idea of ethics-based meditation is a very important issue now, you know, in the current understanding of psychology, making use of Buddhism especially. This is now I think they call it the fourth wave, you know. The first wave, that is the early days, when you have people like Wilhelm Wundt and Carl Jung, Sigmund Freud, and so on. They just thought of psychology. They don't even know exactly what psychology is. So this idea of ethics never came to mind. So when these people like Freud and Jung counsel women, they end up having affairs with them. There are even movies about this story. So, and they felt it was all right because there were no rules in those days. Everything was experimental. Then later they realized you cannot help the patient when you're involved with the patient, especially in terms of psychology, right? And then in recent years, in the 1990s, you find in the US, the Zen masters and the Vajra masters, Vajrayana, they led very messy lives. There was lots of problems with money and with sex. In America, there was a really big scandal, and so much so that the good thing is these American Buddhists gathered together and they decided that you must have a code of ethics. So now that there is this code of ethics, what the teacher can do or should not do, and so on, right? So it's all in keeping with the early teachings. When Buddhism goes to America, people think that you can do what you like with it. It's like, you know, the Buddha is your servant now. You tell the Buddha what to do. But then things don't work that way. But it's good that they're learning, very painfully, unfortunately, very painfully, how meditation won't work, how the spiritual life won't work if you take too much liberty and license. So they're learning this now. So you have this ethics-based psychology, psychotherapy, meditation, right? And there you are. Here it is stated, if you keep moral virtue properly, then it leads to samadhi, you know? And then number 5, he dwells openly and privately, sharing the very same view that is noble and liberating, acting on which one leads one to the full destruction of suffering. Right. So this is a common understanding of the Dhamma, beginning with impermanence, understanding suffering and non-self, right? So there is no revised edition of the Buddha's teaching, in other words. So, this is where the Buddha even went on to say that people may argue about Vinaya, but it's not as serious as when they have wrong views, right? So this last one is, you got to keep to the original teachings, in other words. So these bhikshus are the 5 ways of dwelling at ease. So if you really want to live happily together as a spiritual community, what are the 5 things you must do? Now, in summary, number 1, show loving kindness through your actions. Number 2, loving kindness through speech. Number 3, loving kindness through your mind. Number 4, practice moral virtue, keep the precepts well. And then number 5 is share the same views too. Learn the same Dharma, in other words. We may have different understandings, but we try to see the commonality of especially the 3 characteristics. So this is the teaching of the Phasuvihara Sutta.